Good morning. Um, I've got emotional intelligence again. I know your feedback was not not really for you. I feel like I want to get a little more through it before I definitely decide to drop it. Um, we may decide this isn't for us. I think you've already decided that. But just because, at in different groups, even at DATSCO, which, by the way, DATSCO hoodie, yay. Um, it's been something that's been suggested in a few different scenarios, so I just feel like I want to give it a little more of a chance. If it's not for you, it's not for you. It may not be for me either, but I'd like to get a little past chapter 1 before making that decision for good. We've only got a few pages left to chapter 1, so we'll see how it goes. All right, this section is How the Brain Grew. To better grasp the potent hold of the emotions on the thinking mind, and why feeling and reason are so readily at war, consider how the brain evolved. Human brains, with their 3 pounds or so of cells and neural juices, are about triple the size of those in our nearest cousins in evolution, the non-human primates. Over millions of years of evolution, the brain has grew from the bottom up, with its higher centers developing as elaborations of lower, more ancient parts. The growth of the brain in the human embryo roughly retraces this evolutionary course. Oh, that's actually neat. I didn't know that. I guess that makes sense because the bottom of the brain is like just functions for survival, and the top of the brain is like thinking and critical thinking. Yeah, okay. Interesting. The most primitive part of the brain, shared with all species that have more than a minimal nervous system, is the brainstem surrounding the top of the spinal cord. This root brain regulates basic life functions like breathing and the metabolism of the body's other organs, as well as controlling stereotyped reactions and movements. This primitive brain cannot be said to think or learn. Rather, it is a set of pre-programmed regulators that keep the body running as it should and reacting in a way that ensures survival. This brain reigns supreme in the age of the reptiles. Picture a snake hissing to signal the threat of an attack. From the most primitive root, the brainstem, emerged the emotional centers. Millions of years later in evolution, from these emotional areas evolved the thinking brain, or neocortex, the great bulb of convoluted tissues that make up the top layers. The fact that the thinking brain grew from the emotional reveals much about the relationship of thought to feeling. There was an emotional brain long before there was a rational one. The most ancient root of our emotional life is in the sense of... I just thought about something. Talking about how in an embryo, you kind of follow the same path of bottom to top. And, a child's brain does not fully develop until... I know girls develop a little earlier than boys. I think in a boy, it's 24, 25 when your brain finally fully develops. But I'm just thinking about like with toddlers, maybe that's why they have such emotional responses sometimes, because that's what's fully developed first, or more developed at least. You have those emotional responses rather than being able to logically or rationally think through something. I'm just talking out loud now. Anyway, where was I? The neocortex, the great bulb of convoluted tissues that make up the top layers. The fact that the thinking brain grew from the emotional reveals much about the relationship of thought to feeling. There was an emotional brain long before there was a rational one. The most ancient root of our emotional life is in the sense of smell, or, more precisely, in the olfactory lobe, the cells that take in and analyze smell. Every living entity, be it nutritious, poisonous, sexual partner, predator, or prey, has a distinctive molecular signature that can be carried in the wind. In those primitive times, smell commended itself as a paramount sense for survival. From the olfactory lobe, the ancient centers for emotion began to evolve, eventually growing large enough to encircle the top of the brainstem. I wonder if that's why we have strong emotional reactions to smell. If you have something like the traditional thing to say is like, grandma's cooking, that takes you back to the warm, fuzzy places. And when we, smell certain things, for example, smelling you on my pillow is like, brings back all those feelings. Anyway, sorry. So talking about the olfactory lobe, it eventually grew large enough to encircle the top of the brainstem. In its rudimentary stages, the olfactory center was composed of little more than thin layers of neurons gathered to analyze smell. One layer of cells took in what was smelled and sorted it out into the relevant categories: edible or toxic, sexually available, enemy, or meal. A second layer of cells sent reflexive messages throughout the nervous system telling the body what to do: bite, spit, approach, flee, chase. With the arrival of the first mammals came new key layers of the emotional brain. These, surrounding the brainstem, look roughly like a bagel with a bite taken out at the bottom where the brainstem nestles into them. Because this part of the brain rings and borders the brainstem, it was called the limbic system, from limbus, the Latin word for ring. This new neural territory added emotions proper to the brain's repertoire. When we are in the grip of craving or fury, head over heels in love, or recoiling in dread, it is the limbic system that has us in its grip. As it evolved, the limbic system refined two powerful tools: learning and memory. These revolutionary advances allowed an animal to be much smarter in its choices for survival and to fine-tune its responses to adapt to changing demands rather than having invariable and automatic reactions. If a food led to sickness, it could be avoided next time. Decisions like knowing what to eat and what to spurn were still determined largely through smell. The connections between the olfactory bulb and the limbic system now took on the task of making distinctions among smells and recognizing them, comparing a present smell with past ones, and so discriminating good from bad. This was done by the, this is a big word. This was done by the rhinocephalon, literally the nose brain, a part of the limbic wiring, and the rudimentary basis of the neocortex, the thinking brain. About 100 million years ago, the brain of mammals took a great growth spurt. Piled on top of the thin two-layered cortex, the regions that plan, comprehend, there was a comma in there, the regions that plan, comprehend what is sensed, coordinate movement, several new layers of brain cells were added to form the neocortex. In contrast to the ancient brain's two-layered cortex, the neocortex offered an extraordinary intellectual edge. The Homo sapiens neocortex, so much larger than in any other species, has added all that is distinctly human. The neocortex is the seat of thought. It contains the centers that put together and comprehend what the senses perceive. It adds to a feeling what we think about. It, and allows us to have feelings about ideas, art, symbols, imaginings. In evolution, the neocortex allowed a judicious fine-tuning that no doubt has made enormous advantages in an organism's ability to survive adversity, making it more likely that its progeny would in turn pass on the genes that contain that same neural circuitry. The survival edge is due to the neocortex's talent for strategizing, long-term planning, and other mental wiles. Beyond that, the triumphs of art, of civilization and culture are all fruits of the neocortex. This new addition to the brain allowed the addition of nuance to emotional life. Take love. Limbic structures generate feelings of pleasure and sexual desire, the emotions that feed sexual passion. But the addition of the neocortex and its connections to the limbic system allowed for the mother-child bond that is the basis of the family unit and the long-term commitment to child rearing that makes human development possible. Species that have no neocortex, such as reptiles, lack maternal affection. When their young hatch, the newborns must hide to avoid being cannibalized. In humans, the protective bond between parent and child allows much of maturation. How do you say that word? Maturation? Anyway. In humans, the protective bond between parent and child allows much of maturation to go on over the course of a long childhood, during which the brain continues to develop. As we proceed up the phylogenetic scale, from reptile to rhesus to human, the sheer mass of the neocortex increases. With that increase comes a geometric rise in the interconnections of brain circuitry. The larger the number of such connections, the greater the range of possible responses. The neocortex allows for the subtlety and complexity of emotional life, such as the ability to have feelings about our feelings. There is more neocortex to limbic system in primates than in other species, and vastly more in humans, suggesting why we are able to display a far greater range of reactions to our emotions and more nuance. While a rabbit or rhesus has a restricted set of typical responses to fear, the larger human neocortex allows a far more nimble repertoire, including calling 911. The more complex the social system, the more essential is such flexibility, and there is no more complex social world than our own. But these higher centers do not govern all of emotional life. In crucial matters of the heart, and most especially in emotional emergencies, they can be said to defer to the limbic system. Because so many of the brain's higher centers sprouted from or extended the scope of the limbic area, the emotional brain plays a crucial role in neural architecture. As the root from which the newer brain grew, the emotional areas are intertwined via myriad connections. The emotional areas are intertwined via myriad connecting circuits to all parts of the neocortex. This gives the emotional centers immense power to influence the functioning of the rest of the brain, including its centers for thought. And that's all of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the anatomy of an emotional hijacking. That might be interesting. Yeah, I at least want to give Chapter 2 a try. If you're absolutely not feeling this, then maybe we can stop. But like I said, I at least want to give it a little more of a try. Just even if it's not entertaining the whole time, there may be some nuggets. It's like, oh, that was good to learn, whether it's helping with ourselves or our interactions with other people. We'll see. Anyway, I think that's enough for now.